Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Of course, there's a lot of stories from over the weekend to dig into, but there is one, or really I should say two stories that have been discussed very, very little at all. Very little on perhaps right-leaning news and analysis networks, basically nothing in any way, shape, or form over on the left-leaning outlets. And these would be two separate shootings that occurred in Texas targeting immigration, customs, and enforcement. Now, some of you might know of perhaps one of these stories from over the weekend. One occurred on Saturday, one occurred this morning. And many of you, however, this is the first time that you're hearing about this. Of course, there were the devastating floods, but there has been a lot of media attention turned towards the coverage itself of the floods and trying to blame the Trump administration on things. To cover what the Trump administration should have done regarding staffing on data that isn't even true, as we'll see later from George Stephanopoulos and Dana Bash over at CNN, instead of the two, again, shootings, the targeting of federal law enforcement by those who have been politically incited to do so. That's not receiving any kind of national coverage is despicable, and it is an outrage. So first, this morning, a shooter in Texas ambushed, and I do mean ambushed. He put on a neon green vest and then tried to ambush police officers with an assault rifle earlier this morning. Again, we're gonna bring over to the report after it occurred. This is a Border Patrol spokesman on this.
Right shortly about 8 or 10 minutes before 6 a.m. this morning is when we react to the call. Once we were on scene and we determined we have not only a shooter that's been neutralized, we have an active scene, but the real trigger for us to begin shutting things down was that strange vehicle in the parking lot, because we did not know whether or not there were any other secondary or even more suspects at large, or suspects or explosives, that is, in the parking lot. So out of precaution, we shut this whole zone down until we were able to determine that piece of it. And that is, and just to the point that I walked up here is when we finally got a green light. That is, we finally said, okay, all's clear as far as that particular vehicle. And
so again, that's the second targeting in the last 3 days of DHS officials in Texas. On Saturday, a North Texas police officer was ambushed outside an ICE facility and shot in the neck by 8 men in body armor.
An officer was shot near an immigration detention facility in Alvarado. It happened around 11 last night on Sunflower Lane near the Prairieland Detention Center. Right now, that building is being used by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Police say they were responding to reports of a suspicious person. That officer saw a person who appeared to be armed, and police say when that officer tried to engage with that person, they were shot at. The officer was hit in the neck, but...
So why aren't you hearing about these particular stories? And I will say that it is, again, two shootings. The idea that these aren't stories because there weren't a series of murders that occurred is ridiculous. An attempted shooting is just as bad as a particular shooting, depending on how the situation ends. Thank God the law enforcement saw the individuals and there were again, shot in the neck is cutting it pretty close. But the reason that you're seeing these particular actions comes from things like, for example, an Axios media report this morning. So again, a lot of people are criticizing Axios for later in the morning after Axios had released this report that Border Patrol was fired on in Texas. Axios released this report after there was already a shooting on Saturday that involved ICE officials. This is what Axios reported. Quote, "What we're hearing, the grassroots of the Democrat Party once more. Some of them have suggested what we really need to do is be willing to get shot when visiting ICE facilities or federal agencies," a third House Democrat told Axios. That is an official. A Democrat official said, and I quote, "Some of them have suggested what we really need to do is be willing to get shot when visiting ICE facilities. Our own base is telling us that what we're doing is not good enough. Parenthetical, that there needs to be blood to grab the attention of the press and the public," end quote, the Democrat lawmaker said. A fourth House Democrat, again, this is according to Axios, said constituents have told them civility isn't working and to prepare for violence, ellipses, to fight to protect our democracy, end quote. A fifth House Democrat, again, this is not like a state House Democrat, a fifth House of Representatives Democrat in Congress told Axios that people online have sent me crazy bleep, told me to storm the White House and stuff like that. Though they added that there's always people on the internet saying crazy stuff. Okay, first of all, there's a really important question to ask, other than why are people doing this? And the real question is, where is this coming from? Now, I read the Axios article. Did Axios condemn this? Did Axios talk to the Department of Homeland Security about the rising number of threats and possible ways to address it? Nope, absolutely not. And Democrat officials are the answer to where is this coming from. That's the answer. The answer is from the pipeline that has been set up overtly and clearly. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not random conjecture. The Democrats in the House and the Senate, the Democrats in gubernatorial positions and in state houses, as well as professors at universities, as we're going to get along to later, and the activists in places like union leadership around the country are directly responsible for the rise in political rhetoric and violence. The targeted assassinations in Washington, D.C., the burning of women and children in Boulder, Colorado, the consistent acts of violence that are being, again, directly endorsed, as we saw with the vice mayor of Scataglia in California just a couple of weeks ago, for example.
Not for nothing, but I want to know where all the cholos are at.
When you're calling for gang members to get out there and commit violence, when you're Hakeem Jeffries telling people that you're not going to just fight in the courts and the legislature, you're going to fight in the streets.
We are going to fight it legislatively. We are going to fight it in the courts. And we're going to fight it in the streets.
Oh, we're going to fight it in the streets. Okay, well, I mean, you know, that certainly just can't be considered an overt call for violence. I'm sure that Democrats would, you know, totally condemn acts of political violence when it was brought up to them. AOC on June 10th, it is 100% carrying water for the opposition, she wrote on Blue Sky, to participate in this collective delusion that Democrats for some reason need to answer for every teen who throws a rock, rather than hold the Trump administration accountable for intentionally creating chaos and breaking the law to stoke violence. So there is AOC making it clear that if someone throws a chunk of concrete at an officer's head, which is an attempted murder, Democrats, you know, we don't need to answer for any of that. And of course, it gets worse. Hakeem Jeffries posting pictures with a baseball bat. We're willing to House Democrats will keep up the pressure on Trump's one big ugly bill. As though these particular and inciting rhetoric actions play absolutely no role in the increase in political violence. And it gets a lot more overt. It's not just Democrat officials. You have individuals in the Democrat union sphere openly calling for, again, violence politically based in the street because they do not like policy regarding illegal immigration enforcement, LGBTQ whatever, or Marxist socialist policies.
We are labor. And we move the agenda to support working families all over the country. And if somebody gets in our way, shame on them, because we're going to run right over them, aren't we?
Going to run right over them.
Shame! It's time to make their voices heard. Shame on us if we don't get out there and fight like hell every single day and make our voices heard.
Ah, yes. Okay. And again, they frame it up front with, if you don't do this thing that I consider essential, if you don't give me everything, if you don't give me free healthcare and free abortions, and you don't allow everyone in the country in blanket amnesty, and if you have the police keep people from shoplifting, which is very racist and terrible, ooh, then you are a Nazi, fascist, bigot, homophobe, transphobe, colonialist, cis white man who's probably a Christian, who's a Nazi, and you're going to make this all Handmaid's Tale. And they encourage people repeatedly with their rhetoric, with their voice, and with their actions to participate in political violence. When you tell someone that they are up against Nazis and they are going to die, it just so happens mentally ill people might take you seriously and then commit those very acts. Radio crew, we're going to be back in a second. We've got a lot more to share over on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Again, this is not isolated. Here's Joy Behar calling for people to fight and die for what she calls an infringement on her rights.
Oh, you like that, huh? Touching. It's touching. Okay, but it didn't unite them all because 10 Democrats voted to censure Green.
Wow. Do you want a list of the 10?
Do you want to hear their names?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Why go after them, too? Go after the Republicans.
Because they don't know how to fight and be part of an opposition party. Representative Green gave them the example. The Democrats are not meeting the moment. It is very clear that Medicaid is on the table. It is very clear that Social Security is on the table. It is very clear that people will die. The baby boomers, the civil rights generation, they knew what they had to do. They were willing to fight and die for their rights. This generation of Congress, they are not meeting the moment.
Again, it's everyone is going to die. Therefore, you need to be willing to fight and die. That is the exact kind of rhetoric that is pointed out. And it doesn't matter whether it's just on immigration or whether it's on Medicare. AOC and then former Representative Katie Porter back in 2024 refused after people were chanting, and I quote, "Death to America." AOC and former Representative Katie Porter of California at the time, they wouldn't even condemn the chants. Again, openly, "Death to America."
Does it sound like this is pro-Palestinian or anti-American if they're burning American flags and chanting "Death to America"?
I'm not privy to I haven't seen these reports. I'd have to check for them myself.
I have to check reports for myself. After all, "Death to America," it's like the Simpsons clip where Sideshow Bob is on trial and they open up his shirt and it says "Die, Bart, die." And he's like, "No, that is German. It is German for thee, Bart, thee." Stupid.
Do you support burning the American flag and chanting "Death to America"? Anti-Israel protesters blocking the Brooklyn Bridge burned the American flag and chanted "Death to America." Do you condemn this type of rhetoric?
We've got to get her onto her next event.
Are you okay?
She refuses to say anything and her staffer carts her away. This is a classic maneuver. Refusing to condemn it is, in fact, a method of endorsement. I will repeat that. The refusal to condemn political violence. And Republicans, by the way, do say, yeah, no one should be killing anyone. That's disgusting. What a horrible thing. And that's considered not good enough because you're not voting for their policies on the left. But if Democrats refuse to endorse it, refuse to condemn it, nothing is said. Here's Schumer trying to make excuses after people were firebombing Teslas and dealerships. Domestic terror on its face by definition.
Senator, what's your opinion of the violence against Tesla, their products? What are your thoughts on that? Do you denounce the violence against Tesla products and dealerships and cars in the streets?
Trying so hard to ignore.
I can't talk about Tesla, but Elon Musk is a disaster for America, and America knows it. Look at Wisconsin.
Yes, of course. See, her skirt was too short. That's why she was asking for it. After all, Elon Musk is a disaster. After all, ICE is a disaster. Therefore, you know what's a little, targeted attempted murder. It's disgusting. Here's Nancy Pelosi and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries refusing to denounce explicit acts of terrorism earlier this year.
What do you think about what's happening with the Tesla products, the violence at the dealerships? What's your take on the situation?
Sorry, I'm a little bit late here right now.
What's your take on it? Do you denounce the violence?
Again, I've been in these particular gaggles chasing after representatives, and they can hear you just fine. They're choosing overtly not to speak about it. They'll stop and they'll yell about Israel. They'll yell about the homophobes. They'll yell about white people and Christians and the straight males. And as we'll talk about here in a second, they'll yell for hours on end about staffing changes at the National Weather Service that didn't even occur. They'll spend an entire weekend condemning President Trump using the term Shylock as Representative Nadler went off. Oh, it's the most recognizable anti-Semitic slur in the English language. It's literally a word that has been used by, and just to make this clear, prominent Jewish businessmen in New York for decades, for like centuries. That's what they're going to focus on. The open endorsement of political violence. No. We're going to be back in a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
So what did the Democrats spend all weekend focusing on? Well, they decided to somehow twist the Trump administration executive orders regarding staffing in some parts of the country regarding the National Weather Service as the cause for the horrific flash floods in Central Texas. And so you had individuals like George Stephanopoulos on ABC's This Week, which is their flagship Sunday show, Dana Bash on CNN's State of the Union, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, Democrat senator, all trying to claim, bending over backwards to say that the reason that there are between 80 and 100 casualties at this point due to this horrible flash flood is because the National Weather Service was understaffed or some such nonsense. Here is George Stephanopoulos of the Hillary Clinton era saying this kind of nonsense.
Maria, we're also learning that there were significant staffing shortfalls at the National Weather Service's offices in the region.
You know, George, as of right now, the local county officials really didn't want to address that just.
Now, again, when you make a reporter nervous by the question that you ask, that should be a red flag for you as a host. They're not talking about that. You don't think that ABC This Week asked that question? I guarantee you that whoever this reporter is, that she asked that particular question. And the reason that they most likely told her no, and there's a reason for that up ahead, but let ABC try to paint the idea that, it was just nobody working in NWS. No one knew that a flood could even theoretically happen.
Yeah, what they are telling us is they expected between 4 and 6 inches of rain. That is what weather experts told them, the National Weather Service as well. They also knew that in remote locations, they might get anywhere from 8 to 10 inches. But this amount of rain in such a short amount of time, it was very difficult to navigate. And when the Department of Homeland Security Secretary was here just yesterday, she acknowledged this was an issue. She was going to take these concerns to the White House as well and try and see if there was anything they could do to revamp the system. She says the president is committed to it.
Okay, so again, George tries to go after that, only there's a little bit of a problem here. The problem for this particular narrative is that according to the Associated Press, the National Weather Service office in New Braunfels, which delivers the forecast for Central Texas, Austin, San Antonio, the surrounding areas, had extra staff on duty during the storms, where the office would typically have 2 forecasters on duty during a clear weather situation. They had up to 5 people on staff. Quote, according to Runyon, there were extra people in here that night, and that's typical in every weather service office. And you staff up for an event, you bring in people on overtime, and you hold people over. They did everything by the book. There were no staffing shortages. That is a bold-faced lie from George Stephanopoulos to make that case. And it wasn't just George Stephanopoulos saying that kind of ridiculous, unfettered, unfounded nonsense. Dana Bash did the exact same thing, but decided to kick it up a notch and say, well, isn't this flash flood also due to climate change? Which, well, of course, yes, Republicans and climate change. Yes, the true culprit to everything.
How much do you think the changing climate is part of what we are seeing go on here? Not just what we're seeing in the pictures that we're showing on the screen, but even the flood that you talked about in San Antonio in June.
No, I think climate change is obviously a part of it. These floods are happening more often in more parts of the country and really all over the world. And so we have to face that reality and be better prepared for it and combat it.
And just talking about the federal government and even the local government, 2 Texas National Weather Service offices involved in forecasting and warning about flooding on the Guadalupe River are missing some key staff members.
That's a lie. That's a lie. That is factually incorrect. And when people like Jake Tapper clutch his little pearls over someone questioning CNN reporting like the Trump administration just did last week, because CNN amplified a low confidence early intelligence report that was then discredited and discounted by other major international atomic agencies and investigation agencies regarding the U.S. strike on Iran. And Jake Tapper, how dare you question our reporting? Here's Dana Bash explicitly stating false information on national television. There were no staffing cuts whatsoever to forecasting regarding the Guadalupe River flash floods. That when a tropical storm mixed with already progressing weather moving to the east, it created a stalling situation which dumped a ton of water on the region. Water rose in just 45 minutes over 25 feet. Oh, and that reminds me, it just so happens that the National Weather Service did its job, and there were alerts that were sent out. At 1:14 a.m. Central Time on Friday, July 4th, the National Weather Service in Austin, San Antonio issued a flash flood warning for a series of counties, including Kerr County. They did everything they were supposed to do. And of course, all of the alerts went out. The national alerts, the EAS system, the emergency alert system, which is something of kind of a pet fascination of mine. Everything was done correctly. There are two problems. Number one, people normally do not get out of bed for flash flood warnings. Sorry, that's just the case. People normally, when they get a flash flood warning, they don't get out of bed for it. They think it doesn't affect them. That is a civic failure. That's not blaming the victims in any way, shape, or form, because this has been a part of the culture of the United States. The "I'll just be fine because nothing ever happens" is a horribly chronic condition in modern America. And it ends up resulting in a huge loss of life. If you are going to look at future warning systems, if you're going to look at how we move forward and actually start to get some of these things right, focusing on this and going all off on the Trump administration and not having the appropriate number of equity officers in Anchorage, Alaska. And that's why the NWS wasn't able to predict a flash flood. And then what? They did predict it. They did get the alerts out. People didn't get out in time. And you ended up seeing the phenomenal heroic actions of Coast Guardsmen and the founder of the camp, the girls' camp along the river, who sacrificed himself to save like 70 girls. Well, that's all now overshadowed. We can't even spend time grieving the dead and honoring the heroes because we have to deal with this nonsense from people like Dana Bash and Chris Murphy and Stephanopoulos. And why are they doing that? Are they doing that just because they don't like Trump? No, this is part of the same action that incites political violence. Because when they tell you that there is blood on their hands, when they tell you that the Trump administration, people are going to die, and you had this over the weekend, you had a representative come out in front of the American people and say that we said people were going to die. Here you go, people are dying. It is insipidly disgusting to watch the actions from influencers and the left-wing media and left-wing officials in Congress who promised to you that because there were going to be Medicare cuts or Medicaid cuts to illegal immigrants, that this meant millions around the country were going to die, and then not take responsibility for the political violence that occurs right in front of you. But then suggest that it's Trump's fault for, again, suggesting that there was some waste, some fraud, and some abuse in federal agencies, and certain industries might need to roll back a little bit on like an equity HR person, as though that's going to affect whether or not there's a meteorologist available to analyze climate data in the Gulf of America. It's ridiculous. Now, what does this have to do with the political violence in the country right now? Because there is, in fact, a very, very serious problem that this all, in fact, ties into. That when you spend your time covering these fake stories, instead of the shootings that are taking place, you are implying that you believe Trump's rhetoric is worth heaping shame upon, even when it's factually not true. But the open acts of political violence and their origins and what might have led to those, no, you'll just get Donnie O'Sullivan from CNN to get up in front of everyone and say that political violence is exclusively a right-wing problem. Radio crew, we're going to talk about that in a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. This does, in fact, bring us over to Tom Homan, who made a very acute statement regarding this upswing in political violence, the 700% increase on attacks of members, agents of the Department of Homeland Security. Here you go.
Who were these suspects who were fired, who actually fired the shots and were later arrested? Who were they, Tom?
Look, they're your typical protesters that go from protesters to criminals. The attack on ICE officers, you've covered it many times, is up nearly 700% now. We were talking 500% a couple weeks ago, so it continues. The rhetoric against the men and women of ICE is skyrocketing, especially by members of Congress. We have senators, we have Congress people that compare ICE to the Nazis, compare ICE to racists, and it just continues. So the public thinks, well, if a member of Congress can attack ICE, why can't we? So the rhetoric has to stop. Or it's a matter of time for someone to, one of the ICE officers goes down or a criminal goes down. But we already see an officer go down.
Again, he's correct. And this pipeline is not some mystical thing. We treat the school shooter situation as a former teacher. There are a lot of people who treat the possible school shooters as some type of a deep mystery out there. You see The Atlantic, make this article all about needing to remove the masks from ICE individuals because oh, this could be fostering some type of deep, politically violent, whatever. No, it's not a big mystery. It's not a big mystery as to where this rhetoric is coming from. How many times now after some type of a shooter has the FBI revealed to the country this person was known to us before the shooting? I can tell you, because I have been right each and every single time up until now, and we keep on going, that the political violence the left has driven culturally via the means of critical race theory, LGBTQ plus 2IA gender nonsense, and the pro-jihadi anti-colonialism through those three things have caused a deeply, deeply serious pipeline of political violence in this country. And it's not hidden, and you can see it all over the place. You can see it in classrooms across the country, including those at Princeton University. Now, Chris Rufo is a good friend of the show. He and I have worked together for a long time. You'll remember that Harvard University, due to a lot of his investigations, was stripped of a lot of federal funding because you and I, although they claim to be a private university, are taking a boatload of money in endowments. And a lot of this money goes to various programs, or went to various programs, that are directly antithetical to the American people. And you saw this at Columbia University, you saw this at Northwestern University, you saw this at UPenn before they completely backtracked. And the idea is that your federal tax dollars would go to this university through various grants and endowments and various measures so that they could end up hiring some imbecile, some fool destitute, devoid of any intelligence whatsoever, to get in front of your children and tell you that America is a deeply racist and evil place, and that really what we need is decolonization, and we need everyone to violently rise up and cast off the whites and the men and the Christians and go forth. And that rhetoric is all over the internet. Every single day, these videos are shown to individuals who are mentally ill. And it just so happens that when you pump that out every day, eventually someone takes you up on it. And so for the first time, I'm going to show you someone in the pipeline right now, pre-shooting, before we get to the shooting that absolutely will come from this. I'm going to show you Princeton University and what their professors are doing right now to incite the next terror incident. We're going to talk about that here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be back in just a second. Going to pick up the radio crew.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
You want to take a look at how the shooters are made? You want to take a look at how all of the horrifically disgusting behavior ends up manifesting into direct terror actions and incidents. It does not in any way have some kind of a big mystical, ethereal, pseudo-psychological, in the ether projection. The left tries to say, well, it's clearly alt-right rhetoric. Someone reads 4chan and then they get radicalized to go. No, just not the case. For example, at Princeton University, we have a couple of professors, a developing story, I should say, in which you just have these staff at the university openly encouraging their students to participate in violent revolution from a number of different means. So first of all, here's Professor Lorgia Garcia Peña.
So to recap, 5 premises. Capitalism sucks. It thrives on individualism, and individualism is killing us.
Individualism, killing us, okay? There's your, it's gonna kill you. There's your marker of your death is approaching. You need to fight.
Rebellious communities must have intention. They are always democratic and non-hierarchical, so they can have forms of leadership.
Non-hierarchical democracies are mob. That's a mob rule. If there's no hierarchy to a political structure, it is just the will of the mob.
Well, number 4, while the focus is on the collective, we don't ignore individual needs and circumstances, particularly as related to the inequalities created by heteropatriarchy and racial capitalism. And number 5, communities are imperfect and require radical love to thrive.
Okay, so radical love to thrive. Communities are imperfect. That's the last thing. Before that, though, she says that communities need to be allowed to act because they are facing hierarchical patriarchy nonsense. The idea that your society is responsible for you having a long line at the DMV, or that you shoplifting got arrested because you shoplifted a TV and you got grabbed by the cops, therefore that's the deep white supremacist racial hierarchy, is stupid. That is the most nonsensical take that is prevalent. It is common. You didn't even hear wild applause for this. It's not new. This is in every single university in this country. Well, excuse me, every single taxpayer receiving university that was once great, especially in all of the Ivy Leagues in this country. And the last part there, they're imperfect and they require radical love, that's the out. So after there is an act of violence that is committed, like a political assassination in Washington, D.C., or a firebombing in Colorado, or burning campus buildings and attacking the Jews, or shooting up a Christian school in Nashville, then, oh, well, the communities are imperfect. Actually, they were just very angry and mad. There you go. You have the call to action because you are going to die if you don't. The community can do whatever it wants, even if that includes rape and abuse and murder and the very things they claim to be fighting against, all because the patriarchy has ruined your life. This brings us over to, again, I told you, we're going to show you the direct inside of the pipeline. One of the individuals who is right now inspiring some mentally ill person to commit the next terror attack is Professor Sade Perkins. Sade Perkins is, I don't even know if I have the precise words for this. She is one of the foolish of the foolish. Here's some of her rants over the weekend about those who died in the flood in Texas. Again, this is a professor. What's she professor of, producer Nick?
If this were a group of Hispanic girls out there, this would not be getting this type of coverage that they're getting. No one would give a and all these white people, the parents of these little girls, would be saying things like they need to be deported, they shouldn't have been here in the first place, and yada, yada, yada.
So she is a non-resident fellow at Princeton University who is calling herself some type of market manager of just all kinds of nonsense. So she gets out in front of the community and says that the girls who died, the only reason this got any coverage is because they're white girls who died at this camp next to the river in Texas. Again, active staff member at Princeton University out here saying this kind of stuff.
They want you to have sympathy for these people. They want you to get out of your bed and to come out of your home and to go find these people and to donate your money to go find these people. Meanwhile, they are deporting your family members. Meanwhile, they're setting up concentration camps and prisons for your family members. And I need y'all to keep that in mind before y'all get out there and put on your rain boots and go find these little girls.
Just, again, you want to look at the radicalism right there. There's the assigning of the guilt right in front of you. Again, just innocent, like teenage girls swept away by horrible floodwaters.
I don't.
So she did get, I want to make sure we actually got all those out. Here we go.
They want you to have, if this were a group of Hispanic girls out there, this would not be getting this type of coverage that they're getting. No one would give a and all these white people, the parents of these little girls, would be saying things like they need to be deported, they shouldn't have been here in the first place, and yada, yada, yada.
So people were understandably pretty disgusted by those particular comments. This is how she decided to respond.
I don't understand all this, extraordinary hate or whatever. Like, I get that white people are not used to people telling them and calling them out on their racism and telling them about their double standards and how you wouldn't give a damn about other children and how there's children in ICE detention right now who y'all don't give two about. There's no prayers going up for them. But we're supposed to stop the world and stop everything we're doing to go and hunt for these little missing white girls.
Again, flood victims, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. But you need to see the kinds of people that are actively committing these kinds of calls for violence and the erasure of value for anyone that they consider to be a beneficiary of the system they are trying to tear down. She doesn't hide this.
Again, I actually have empathy, so I can put myself in other people's shoes and
what does she have empathy for? She claims that, well, I have empathy for the black and the brown people. That makes it right for me to hate white people. Even though, again, the some of the girls at this camp were not white. It doesn't matter. She decided that this is a white camp and a red state. Therefore, if they die, it's no problem.
I understand that that's pretty up, but it seems like y'all don't get that. Y'all don't get that. Y'all don't have the empathy gene, for sure.
The empathy gene. The empathy gene. Ah, yes. Nothing more scientific in Princeton University than thinking you need a gene for empathy. And by the way, if empathy was genetic, you certainly fell short on that end of the gene pool.
But since I get EBT and y'all are paying
the food stamp argument. Yes.
for it, I appreciate you.
You want to know why a lot of Republicans and a lot of independents are all for throwing a lot of people off of food stamps? It's because they're people like this. People who waste your tax money with a fellowship at Princeton University by helping the community? No, by making fun of dead girls in Texas and saying that actually it's totally fine because ICE is deporting MS-13 gang members. Ah, yes, of course. Now, she's had a couple of other really horrific things over the last couple of years, too. Here's where, by the way, we're going to start getting into the end of the pipeline. Because what she then comes out with is because she said these horrible things, people have said some very unkind things in response. Check it out. Here's what she says that is the next step.
To anyone who, put my public address out there as more public, okay, do something about it. Do something about it. Like, come hither. I would love to see you walk your through this gate and see if you're not going to be leaving out of here in a duffel bag, like, for sure.
Okay, so she makes the claim that, her address has been put out there. Now she's the victim. People are going to come by. She dares them to go. Here's where things get a little bit more concerning, you might say.
On one hand, it's definitely funny because I'm over here kikiing for sure, but do not negate the fact, all right? These are white people using their white power, all right, to try to bring me down, I guess. But the fact that it's just not working is even more hilarious. Y'all have called Princeton. Mind you, my fellowship with Princeton was 2 years ago. The work that I did is already done, and the money that I've been paid has already been paid and spent. So.
And finally, last but not least, again, so we've shown the rhetoric, we've shown the professors at Princeton, we've shown the individual who went through the fellowship at Princeton. Now, here's the end of the pipeline. Ladies and gentlemen, this is from her social media, posting a bunch of firearms on her social media and then taking those firearms down to the range to shoot human targets. So, let's recap. You have the individual who attended the university with all of the exact same kind of you need to bring up and rise up the oppressed, who, by the way, certain staff members which are taking over other staff members at their staff members meetings at the university, according to the Princetonian. You've got fellows going through the programs, going out saying really horrible stuff, and then saying, if anyone disagrees with me, maybe, here's a bunch of guns. All right, sounds mentally stable. That's the pipeline. There you go. And it will continue because the Democrats in the House, in the Senate, in the media, in state governments around the country, as well as influencers, and we're going to get to that up next, refuse to denounce it and subtly encourage it. And it's not that subtle because they're just emotional. They're just fighting for their rights. We'll be back in a second, radio crew. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, beyond those particular, again, really, really, really terrible things that have been said, the rest of the left is having a really, really rough time. Karen Bass, regarding immigration, she showed up to, what park was it in LA today? Say what?
It was MacArthur Park.
MacArthur Park, gotcha. So the Immigration Customs Enforcement was doing a large operation there today. Karen Bass, mayor of Los Angeles, known for being in Ghana while her city burned to the ground and denying that there were any riots taking place, even though the officers serving under her were getting chunks of concrete thrown at their heads. She decided to show up and, I guess, stop ICE.
I am going to say,
Mayor Bass, I need to get my phone and we're departing.
Okay. All right. Statement, Mayor Bass. Mayor Bass.
Mayor Bass.
Any comment, Mayor Bass? Thank you. Mayor Bass, any comment? Yes, my comment is they need to leave, and they need to leave right now. They need to leave because this is unacceptable.
Who did you speak with?
Just wait and see.
Mayor Bass,
They will be leaving soon.
Mayor Bass, who did you speak with on the phone just now? Who did you speak with on the phone?
I had a customer.
Wow.
Okay, so she gets up a little tough front there. So I spoke with the head of customs, and I tell you what, you guys need to leave right now, and they're going to leave right now. And they're not going anywhere. Federal law will be upheld. Sorry. The majority of the country voted for this. The majority of the country voted for this, not just in the electoral, but also in the popular. They voted for federal agencies upholding federal law. And if you want to say that the middle of the road position is just targeting the criminals and then letting the rest of the illegal immigrants like get amnesty or find some kind of a program, nope, that's not the center position. Even if there are those on the Republican Party that suggest that sometimes to try to be nice. According to CNN's data, we'll get to this here in a couple of minutes. According to CNN's polling data, the majority of Americans support mass deportations of everyone who's an illegal immigrant. And do you know who the most supportive of those policies are? Legal immigrants who came here legally. So the idea that Karen thinks that she's leading some kind of a popular movement here, no. A violent movement that she's leading? Yes, absolutely. That she's inciting? Yes, absolutely. That she's encouraging? 100%. Is it a massive, amazingly strong movement with Americans? No. And Tom Homan knows this as well, doesn't have any time for it.
And for those that say 3,000 a day is too much, I want to remind them, do the math. We'd have to arrest 7,000 every single day for the remainder of this administration just to catch once Biden released the nation, right?
I mean, hey, there is a pretty good argument to be made that the deportations to be expected in the future could be a whole lot higher and a whole lot rougher, and Americans would not bat an eye. And still, the precision is present. Now, we're going to bring back the radio crew in just a couple of minutes, but just kind of an update here. Little is known so far about the guy who carried out the shooting at the Border Patrol facility we mentioned earlier in McAllen, Texas, before being shot dead. However, we do know that a social media post stated President Trump can deploy 700 Marines to Los Angeles, but, not to the floods in Texas, which gives you a bit of an idea there. Be back in a second. Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
I would be remiss if I didn't actually discuss one thing that has happened over the weekend that we've gotten a lot of questions about. Elon Musk, former head of D.O.G.E, the guy in charge of Tesla and X, he struck up this America Party poll, and he asked just the general world at large, not Americans, just the general world at large, if he thought we should start a third party, which first of all is really, really funny because that firmly cements that the Libertarian Party is not a serious party whatsoever. And though they have been desperately simping to try to get Musk to endorse the Libertarian Party, that entire party from the state level to the federal level is run by clowns. It's unfortunate because libertarians are either leaning to the right and therefore on the right, or they're just immature. So that said, Elon Musk gets out there and launches this America Party. And he then, he gets a mixed reaction. Essentially, everyone on the right side of the aisle despises the idea of an America Party because they know that it's only going to strip votes away from the Republican Party, like the Libertarian Party does. The biggest endorsers of the America Party were Democrat strategists and influencers, like Harry Sisson, producer Nick's favorite goofball over on the left, are thrilled about the America Party. Now, what does the America Party stand for? Nothing. Nothing at all. There's no. They say, oh, well, we're for cutting expenses and the national debt and things like that. Okay, yeah, I think that would be excellent. But there's a lot more to national policy than just saying you're going to cut spending. Great. So did Newt Gingrich in the 90s. But there's a little bit more to it than that. Trump did finally respond to this America Party thing that, by the way, is going nowhere. Just calling it now. Here's President Trump responding to it.
Your reaction to Elon Musk starting a third party?
I think it's ridiculous to start a third party. We have a tremendous success with the Republican Party. The Democrats have lost their way, but it's always been a two-party system. And I think starting a third party just adds to confusion. It really seems to have been developed for two parties. Third parties have never worked.
By the way, that is true. For all of those saying, oh, what we really need is a multi-party system, show me one country in Europe that works in. One. What you get out of a multi-party system is a coalitional fraction government that always gives you the worst of every single world. A multi-party system has never been done correctly ever. But politicians would have to work together. Are you serious right now? They would they? Yes. The politicians who right now consist of AOC and Jasmine Crockett fighting bare-knuckled with Marjorie Taylor Greene in the Oversight Committee. All of a sudden, that's going to be a respected round table of deep intellectuals, is it? Okay. If you want to get involved in this country, by the way, we do have a means to select someone different than just someone in the two-party system. It's called a primary. And in a primary, people can run, and then you vote for those in the primary. The problem is that no one in America cares about the primaries. No one cares about, is my biggest gripe with American politics. We have fair weather fans who will come out and vote in the general, but will not come out and vote in the primary. That's where the decisions are made. That is. Sorry. Again, Zoran Mamdani is an excellent example of this, winning the Democrat New York City primary. There was not record turnout for that primary. There was incredibly low turnout for that primary. That's why they got the jihadist communist who talks about quotes from Marx all the time. So spare me. And by the way, the argument that the parliamentary system from around the world is decent, there have been more parliamentaries which have fallen in the history of this world than actually despotic kingdoms. So before anyone endorses the ranked voting system or the grand multi-party coalitional nonsense, I will remind you that anyone who actually suggests that everything they don't like is a uniparty, no, I'm sorry. Every time you don't get something that you like, it doesn't mean that it's the uniparty. That's a coping mechanism. Get involved at the primary level is the answer. I don't like it. And by the way, I say that as a guy who despises the primaries for Republicans here in Indiana. They suck. I still get involved in them though, because I think that there should be better options on the table. So, moving forward from that, Pramila Jayapal decided to get out in front of the world and suggest that she's really angry about Republicans and allowing parents to make decisions for their children. It's pretty spectacular.
All of a sudden, the Republican Party, that was the party of saying limited government, we don't want you telling us what to do as parents, all of a sudden now, you are saying that you don't trust the parents. It's clear to me that you don't trust the medical establishment, even though every major medical organization, the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, all of these organizations are saying that this is care that is supported, and yet you're saying you don't trust them either. So I think what the gentlelady is saying is she's the only one that can be trusted to make the decisions. The Republican Party is the only one that can be trusted because... Okay, so just as a quick little poll here. If you started giving the smooth Marlboro Red cigarettes to your children, do you think that that would just be considered socially acceptable? If you're gonna, at the end of the day, you're home tired from work, your kindergartner comes up to you and says, "Mama, I had a rough day at school," and you pour in their sippy cup St. Elmo's Old Fashioned premix. You think that's fine? That's no problem, whatever. Or maybe you'd like some too. You just tell them, go out, take my keys, get in the car, put a little booster seat up. You drive to the store because you tell me you're a great driver. So therefore you drive to the store, pick me up some St. Elmo's Old Fashioned mix and drive on back. No, but all of a sudden when we start talking about kids developing sexualities, they're suddenly adult enough for that? Again, the pipeline that Democrats have built for themselves are deeply unpopular with everyone but those who are mentally ill enough or lonely enough to participate in it. Now, unfortunately for us all,
there are the influencer class. And the influencer class are a special kind of stupid. There was a very famous left-wing streamer named Destiny. His actual name is Steve Bonnell II. So Steve Bonnell Jr. is a complete idiot. And he makes a living being wrong. He has been really, really gross about the Texas floods because, of course he has. And he said, I heard God killed those kids because they were using NordVPN promo code Destiny to get around the Texas porn ban. So he advertises his VPN sponsor to dunk on the children at the camp who were washed away by the flash flood. That is the most popular streamer on the left. Go ahead, producer.
NordVPN actually came out and disowned Destiny and claimed that they had no partnership with him at all. And then he responded with a post making fun of them and children again.
Well, there you go. Deplatforming works. Radio crew over on WIBC. We'll catch you real soon. We'll continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Okay, now that the radio crew is out and we can spend a little bit of time here on the bonus tonus side of things here, I do actually have a little bit of interaction with Destiny before. Again, this is the most popular streamer on the left. So the right has their Ben Shapiro or your Charlie Kirk, or again, your famous right-wing streamers, live streamers who actually go out and do their media from the millennial or kind of the Gen Z aspect. Those are the most popular. For the left, they have Destiny. This guy who, again, tried to use a VPN service, NordVPN. By the way, if NordVPN would like to sponsor this show, we don't make fun of dead children. So in case NordVPN wants to reach out, we do this really great thing where we don't mock those who have died. It's kind of a staple of the show, actually. So he then says, because people called him out, he said, don't ever forget, these are the same people who want to tell you jokes are bad when they're laughing it up over families being destroyed via deportation. Families are no longer being destroyed via deportation. Under the Obama administration, families were being separated, and the children were kept here and thrown into a foster system from hell. The United States foster system is terrible. And then the parents were then deported at rates, by the way, that are pretty comparable to the Trump administration today because of all of the court interjections. So Trump right now is deporting families together. Though that's being run as American citizen. 2-year-old American citizen with cancer is deported to Honduras. The mom from Honduras wanted the kid to go with her. And then he says also LGBTQ being kicked out of the military and friends being murdered in Ukraine by a genocidal maniac. All because they're too spineless to break with the inhumane machine that is MAGA. All right. I will, in fact, engage just a smidge with these two really stupid points. So first of all, as for LGBT being kicked out of the military, only individuals who are transgender are not allowed to actively serve in the military because they have a mental illness. And there is joy on the right for decent policy being upheld that is keeping our soldiers safer. So, again, I'm looking for all of these right-wing, serious individuals out there, these big names, who are supposedly making fun of gay people for being thrown out of the military. That's not the case. The U.S. Navy is still doing just fine. So, that said, I also don't know of anyone out there who's like laughing, it's like, oh, friends being murdered in Ukraine by a genocidal maniac. I'm still looking for those out there that are saying, haha, Ukrainians are dying. No. The best you're going to get is from the kind of populist, hyper-isolationist crew who, even if they suggest that they think that Putin is right in this war, they're not rooting for the war. They're like anti-war. Basically, it's like the right-wing version of hippies. I'm not seeing it, Chief. So he says, don't let these vermin bully you into civility while they hide behind their veneer of convenient cruelties. Okay, so that's his argument. Again, here's the pipeline. It's always the same. They dehumanize people by not giving them everything that I want them to give people. So therefore, they're animals, and I can call for their murder and then laugh at them for being slaughtered or killed in natural disasters or what have you. So, an individual who reached out and said, look, you have your jokes, but how are you comparing kicking people out of the military who aren't fit for the job and deportations to people drowning? Then you try to gaslight people who have an issue with it into thinking they're the ones in a cult. Destiny responded, maybe the kids weren't fit for camping near a river if they couldn't swim. That is the most popular streamer on the left. That is the idol of a lot of young leftists in Gen Z, the last of the millennials, and I-alpha behind them. Who, again, not like it was a Republican camp. It was just a camp for teen girls. And that's like the punchline of a joke to you. So this is where I'll reveal something here. Right after I was fired from Indianapolis Public Schools for exposing critical race theory, Destiny's team reached out to me for an offer of a debate about critical race theory, which I had studied at the time for about 7 or 8 years at the graduate level. He wanted to debate me. And I thought about it a little bit. There was a guy at our time over at the Chalkboard Review team who essentially offered to help facilitate it and kind of do some moderating stuff. And I considered it. And then I did something that I'm to this day extremely thankful that I went through with. I looked up his streams and I watched a little bit about what he had to say. And I discovered, or I should say I found, him to be a moral coward. He is a coward and completely devoid of any intelligence whatsoever. He is excessively stupid and he has no moral values at all. And that means that if I debated him, that would in fact be casting your pearls before swine. That'd be a waste of my time. Who would I be convincing? At the time I didn't have, a show and kind of a larger following on some things. I was just a guy getting into the education game on the policy side. Every time that I see Destiny tweet one of these things, in which again, he just openly, now just like the rape victim, blaming the girls for sleeping in the flash flood territory of the Guadalupe River if they couldn't swim. I'm glad every single day that I didn't accept that debate and waste my time with an individual who has no moral worth whatsoever. That's the lead guy for the left. The pipelines are very, very, very present. And they will continue as long as those in this country. So by the way, when I see Harvard getting defunded or Princeton University, which should be getting defunded, Columbia University getting threatened with lawsuits into defunding, I don't cry for that at all. You can sit out here and pretend, it's going to cut cancer research. That's not true. I'm sorry, some lesbian dance major or some African studies and decolonialism professor does not deserve your money. They don't deserve my money to incite and create terrorists through some kind of a domestic network of dehumanization. I don't care. And when those individuals are fired from federal bureaucracy positions and they chase Senator Jim Banks around saying, don't you care that I was fired? I'm a social construction justice person. And then Banks said, you probably deserved it. The elevator doors close and the pearl clutching starts. I just don't care. Cry harder. Learn to code. Thank God. Every single day, I thank God that the Supreme Court ruled that federal judges no longer have universal injunction authority and that Donald Trump won the last presidential election so that Kamala Giggles on her knees Harris would have made all of this much, much, much worse. We'll be back tomorrow with a lot more. Thanks very much for tuning in. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC.